3-0. Let's go.
Woo! Whoa! Yeah! Bring it up! Bring it up! Yeah!
The Chargers are 3-0 to start the season. This is crazy. I thought I was very optimistic predicting the Chargers win 12 games. I thought that was extremely optimistic. And even I didn't have them at 3-0 at this point in the game. My name is Cecilia. Welcome to Chargers Check-In. And this week, man, that was a good one. So first we got to talk winners and losers. Obviously, the Chargers won this one. And it's kind of the question of, did the Chargers win or did the Broncos lose? And I think that the answer to that really is both. Which is very promising. On one hand, there were 3 different deep passes that Bo Nix could have hit and he didn't. And, to a certain extent, that's definitely on him. I think there was some contact made with him on one of those passes. We'll have to look at that. The fact of the matter is, one of the differences going into this game was Justin Herbert is a better quarterback than Bo Nix. And Bo Nix has struggled going way down the field. There's a reason that they kind of keep him on these short passes. And at some point, he's going to have to figure that out. Because his receivers were good enough. The Chargers secondary has been really good to start off this season, but he had some chances and he didn't take them. So in that sense, that is the Broncos losing. The other factor with the Broncos is they had a lot of penalties. I want to say they had 90 yards of penalties, and the Chargers only had 25. Yeah, they had 10 penalties for a total of 90 yards. We're going to get into that, but to me, that's just being outcoached, right? Because penalties, obviously, they come down to individual players, but they're primarily a reflection of the discipline of the team overall. And the Chargers had them beat on that. That, again, is the Chargers did the thing that was right and the Broncos did the thing that was wrong. Now, in terms of the Chargers winning the game, you have, that last drive. Obviously, you have that incredible pass from Herbert to Keenan Allen, which is just, that is one of the most impressive passes I've ever seen from him. And he has had some amazing touchdown passes in his time. But, if you look at all the stills, not just the footage, you see that hand in his face. You see him get smacked and fall down. And I don't even think Keenan Allen was looking when the pass was made. That'll be an interesting thing to watch back. So good. And the Broncos were really good in the red zone. It's just hard to put anything past their secondary. But Justin Herbert got it done. On top of that, the actual last drive where they went and got that field goal, I thought Omari and Hampton did really well. I thought they did a good job getting exactly where they needed to go, running out the time, not trying to force any more plays than they needed to, just perfect management and perfect trust in their kicker. Cameron Dicker is the most accurate kicker in the NFL. There's no reason to force the ball to go farther down than you need. As soon as you're in that comfortable range, let the clock run out. And they did a great job on defense, forcing the Broncos to burn through their timeouts. The Broncos went into that last part of the game, it kind of feeling like it was in favor of them. They were in control. They had 2 minutes left, 3 timeouts. And there were some big plays from the guys on defense to where you kind of go, yeah, the Broncos had a chance to take this game, but when it mattered, the Chargers performed. And I think that's the biggest question of, did the winners really win the game, is how did they play in the fourth quarter, especially those last few minutes? And the Chargers showed up. And I hope that the main takeaway for Chargers fans is this is a different Chargers. This isn't the Chargers that does amazing until 2 minutes left. This is the Chargers team that no matter what happened before 2 minutes, they're going to be at their best. And for Justin Herbert, that has always been true. There's some statistic about he's led his team to a tremendous amount of leads going into 2 minutes or less, and then his defense has consistently let him down. I think that time it's safe to say that that's over. It's because of Jesse Minter, but it's not just because of Jesse Minter. It's because Derwin's having an amazing year. Even though Khalil is out, they're still managing to get pressure on quarterbacks. Obviously, you'd love to see this team with a great edge rusher, but, for what they have, they're outperforming what their roster says that they should, and that comes down to leadership, and that leadership is coming from Derwin. So the fact that winners won and losers lost is a really good thing for the Chargers, because would you have liked to see them win by more than a field goal? Yeah, but it's an AFC West game. That's how these things go. Unless you're playing the Raiders, it's just going to be, it's going to come down to a field goal, and that's how it is. And I was so nervous going into that field goal because if you watched all the other games that happened yesterday, man, special teams was all over the place. There were blocked field goals. There were field goals that missed and lost games, field goals that made and, won games. It was just such a crazy thing. The Packers game, the Eagles won on a blocked field goal returned for a touchdown. Just crazy things were happening with special teams, but Cameron Dicker got it done. The next thing I want to take a look at is the coaching. So we're looking big picture, Harbaugh versus Peyton in this game. I thought that the Broncos got plainly outcoached in pretty much every sense. The number one statistic you can look at for that is penalties. The Broncos looked very undisciplined. 90 yards of penalties, pretty significant when the Chargers only had 25. I think that, you could look at that and say, if that alone changes, the Broncos probably win this game. And I kind of agree. The Chargers offense needed those breaks, especially in the second half. They really needed those breaks. And the Broncos handed it to them. And I always think the best test of coaching is not the ceiling of a team, it's the floor, right? And the thing that determines the floor are things like discipline. It's the penalties. It's when things are going badly, how bad does it get? And for the Chargers, even when things were going badly, they never at any point completely fell apart. And, the Broncos had the momentum most of the time. This was the first time all season, I believe, that the Chargers didn't have the lead. 17 unanswered points, and in a way that's that's completely unacceptable. Any lesser of a coach would not have been able to establish the level of confidence that it takes to go, yeah, we lost the last 17 points unanswered. We're going to go out and win. To me, that takes really impressive confidence, And, I thought the last quarter, in terms of time management, was handled perfectly. I don't think you could ask for it to be any better. They went in with their timeouts. They used their timeouts well. They forced the Broncos to blow through their timeouts, so there's just nothing Sean Payton can do. And I look at what Harbaugh has done with these players who are they're all playing at their best. They're playing with such confidence. I think the two best examples of that are Tony Jefferson and Quentin Johnson. Tony Jefferson, he's coming off of the practice squad. He has every reason to play desperately trying to make the roster, but this is a veteran player. He's not going to play with desperation. But he plays with a real confidence. It seems like every time that there's a big play that doesn't go the opposing offense's way, Tony Jefferson is around that play. Whether it's a pass breakup or, making a tackle where his teammate misses, it feels like Tony Jefferson is becoming a really important part of the defense. I have a hard time thinking that Tony Jefferson is going to be on the practice squad again. He seems too valuable. It seems like a player that other teams are going to want. He has proven himself. I don't know what will happen when Elijah Molden is back, because he is also very much proven. It'll be interesting to see what kind of role that they have and who they're able to keep active, because Elijah Molden has been amazing too, and he's been a big factor in a lot of the turnovers that they've gotten, which is a strength of the defense and is a very important part of their game. And as for Quentin Johnson, I think this is a great place to switch to talking about key matchups in this game. One of the most important matchups going into this game was, who is Pat Surtain going to be put on? And that answer was Quentin Johnston a lot of the time. And QJ stepped up to that challenge. He looked good out there, and he had some really important plays, and he's just the best example of what this regime is doing with players. He's a completely different player than he was 2 years ago. After his rookie year in the league, you would not have believed that he was capable of this, but Jim Harbaugh believed, and I think that really should be the main takeaway from this game. Jim Harbaugh believed, and so should you. Man, I am so bought in to Harbaugh. I'm so bought in. And I liked how these matchups were handled for the most part. I like hitting McConkey in the middle of the field. The linebacker room is probably the weakest room for that Denver defense, and arguably it's their only weakness, right? And so you have to attack the middle of the field, and I thought they did a pretty good job of that with Ladd, with Hampton's runs. The most impressive thing to me about this coaching, it's not just the confidence at the end of the game, it's also, I think, the effect that it's having at the beginning of the game. The Chargers are having a lot more success on their opening drives. They're able to get down the field, get 3 points on the board. And maybe as fans we're going, man, but you're in a rhythm and you're getting 10 yards, 15 yards. Why can't you finish it and get a touchdown? But there were times last season where it felt like the opening drive is kind of a wash. I would rather that the defense is on the field first, because I don't think they're going to score on their first drive. I just don't think it's going to happen. And it seems like this year that opening script is a lot better. And, part of that is just it's year 2. Justin Herbert gets to be in his second year with this offense. But it's not just that, right? Because the rookies are involved. I think they're making a big difference. It's nice to see them have some success in that sense. Although, yeah, you'd rather they get up by 7 than 3. But their defense has been good enough that, I mean, they started out with a 10-0 lead, just like they did against the Chiefs. So you can't be too mad at that. Another key matchup that in this case did not go their way was the Broncos D-line against their offensive line. Now, that is a bit harder to judge because so many players went down. At one point, at different points in the game, Becton went down, Bozeman went down, Pipkins went down. He got poked in the eye. I feel like the Chargers have the weirdest injuries. What's going on with eyes this season? They did allow 5 sacks, which is not okay. Even Joe Alt allowed a sack, and that is, I mean, that's crazy. I think after this game, if he hadn't allowed a sack, he should be in line for Protector of the Year. Last year, he held up against Max Crosby in his debut, but he didn't hold up in this game. Obviously, he wasn't the main problem. They weren't blocking great for runs either. But I think Herbert handled it really well, at least as well as you can expect him to. At the end of the day, you definitely need better O-line play when it comes to pass protection, because Herbert he got hit like 15 times. He was taking a beating back there. And we have seen how that's not sustainable for him. He's had to play through too many injuries, and in the next few years as he gets older, you're really going to want that line to protect him. That being said, let's talk about the defense, because my first reaction to this game is, man, this defensive line is coming together. I'm a bit frustrated with the lack of real pass rush from the edges, but at the same time, Khalil Mack is hurt. You know it would be better if he was out there, but it just feels like the missing piece is some sort of really fast edge rusher with a lot of moves. Right now it feels like, you have these guys like Thule who they really just want to collapse the pocket and close in on the quarterback, and that's a really good thing to have. But then once they're escaped, they can't really chase down quarterbacks really well. Luckily, that's where Troy Dye has come in. That's where Deion Henley has come in, Derwin James. But you really want that quality from the edges. I think they all have a really good motor, but they don't really have the speed to close those things. So that's the kind of thing that, you may want to look to at the trade deadline. What is going to be available? Whose seasons are going to be going poorly enough that they want to start picking up those draft picks? Because I keep thinking, man, this secondary with a good pass rush would be unbelievable. And if you think about it, that's what the Broncos have, right? They have really good corners, really good safeties, and their defensive line gets home consistently. And so that weakness of linebackers it's almost covered up by everything being so good around them. And the Chargers don't have a weakness of linebackers. Deion Henley is having I would say a Pro Bowl year so far. It's only 3 games in, but he's doing amazing, and Troy Dye has really stepped up. I'm really happy with that room. It's just on the defensive line, they need edges. That said, the interior, I don't think you can ask much more from Jamari Caldwell. That is the 3rd round pick out of Oregon. I thought he would take longer to come online. I thought, he's not going to end up being much of a starter. He's just kind of going to be a rotational piece. We're not going to see a whole lot of him as they kind of, get him to put on some weight, put on some strength and stuff. But he has been effective. In the first quarter, he had a really impressive run stop that just completely stopped the play before the line of scrimmage. And it was just like, whoa, you're running into a wall already. What can this guy do with another season with Ben Herbert? What's that going to look like? And T.R. Tart, he's had a huge impact this season. He had a couple good plays this game, and it's amazing to get that level of impact from the interior. And again, you just have to ask, what would this look like if they had another piece at edge rusher? And, it's tough. You're evaluating this Chargers team having lost 2 of their premium position players in Rashawn Slater and Khalil Mack, but Khalil Mack will be back later this season. I really like the packages when they put Thule and Mack on the same side and they let them just bull rush these guys, because they both want to collapse that pocket, and that's so hard to play against. But, they need someone on that other side. They need someone who can chase these quarterbacks down, especially in the AFC West, where every quarterback in the AFC West is pretty good at evading sacks. Obviously, Mahomes is legendary at it, and Bo Nix he's just really athletic, and he doesn't always have the arm to get somebody open downfield, but They got a lot of first downs on just those little check downs. I probably shouldn't say a lot of first downs because they didn't have a lot of first downs. In fact, the defense didn't allow any first downs in the first quarter, which is just awesome. 3 different drives went 3 and out. Man, they're so close. This defense is so close to being exactly where we need them to be. If we can get the defense up to a Super Bowl level, when you have a Super Bowl level quarterback and a Super Bowl level defense, you're pretty unstoppable. And the Chargers are almost there. I hope they make a move. And my other note on the defense is Tony Jefferson is legit. That's all. Tony Jefferson is legit. We've already talked about it. I'm glad he's getting a chance to be out there. It's too bad Molden is hurt, but I'm very happy with this secondary. All right, let's talk about the offense. Obviously, they were super clutch in those last 2 drives. It was really impressive. It is impressive how even when the failures pile up, Herbert is able to flip everything around in those last 2 minutes of the game. That's something he's been very consistent at in his career. It is always the defense that lets him down or something weird that happens. It's never, well, things got serious, and so Herbert throws the ball away. He is consistently able to extend plays, find guys that are open, and now that he has Keenan Allen, he's amazing. At some point, we got to talk about how the offensive line isn't living up to things, but I don't even know how to evaluate them. I couldn't have told you the name of the person playing right tackle because that's how deep into it they were. At different points, Mekhi Becton, I believe he's out with a concussion. We will see that information today when the coaches do their press conferences. This offense had so much to overcome. Najee went down early in the game. Becton was out. Bozeman was getting looked at. Pipkins went into the tent a couple times, and then he got poked in the eye. Like I said, just really weird stuff happening over there. And considering all of that, you look and go, yeah, against a really good defensive line, they did pretty well in that way. It's hard to be mad at that, but this isn't sustainable, so we'll see what their line looks like going into the Giants. Luckily, the Giants do not have the pass rush or anything on defense that the Broncos do, but it's still a frightening situation because there's a lot of tough games ahead, and we need to protect Herbert. We absolutely need to protect Herbert. And I think Herbert did a good job protecting the ball overall. His interception, to me, is like, yeah, if you let him get hit this many times, eventually something's going to fall apart. The Chargers have been somewhat lucky with teams not taking advantage of mistakes, especially when a ball bounces off a player's hands or chest. At that point, you got to ask, is this the quarterback's fault, or is this just kind of how things pan out? And that's kind of how I look at that interception. What would that play look like if pressure wasn't getting to Herbert every single play? Is what it is. I'm happy with Herbert's performance. He got it done in the end, and that's what matters. He got, I want to say, twice as many yards as Bo Nix. And again, that was the biggest factor going into this game. You have 2 really good defenses, 2 strong offenses, and ultimately that's going to come down to the better quarterback. And it did. And Herbert got it done, so I'm happy with that. Also worth noting that Oronde Gadsden got involved, finally, in a pretty big way. He only had 46 yards, I believe. I remember I was taking notes and I wrote down 3 first downs for Oronde Gadsden, and then I looked up, and he had already gotten a 4th one. Cross that out. 4 first downs for Gadsden. It was just awesome. Every time he got the ball in his hands, it felt like Herbert really trusted him, and, Herbert has other guys he trusts. He can just throw it to Ladd every play. We know that because that's what he did last year. He can just throw it to Keenan every time he wants a first down. But, he's choosing to trust Gadsden. And if we can get 30 yards every game out of him, to me, that's a big deal, because then you start looking at, does that free up Hampton for these little plays? Does that take any pressure off of our other receivers who are already complementary pieces to each other? And it also makes you think, who do we need to draft next year? Can we afford to put more pieces toward the offensive line and fewer toward pass catchers? Because pass catchers have taken up so much of the draft for the Chargers. I just want to think, man, if they could get an elite edge, if they could get a couple more pieces on the offensive line, even depth pieces, that will make such a big difference. But I was very happy with how Gadsden played. Now, in the 4th quarter, I had the thought, if they lose this game, it's not because of Herbert, it's not because of their defense, it is because they can't run the ball. That was my thought. It's without Najee Harris. Sure, Hampton's having a good game, but do they actually trust him when it counts? And they had the ball at about the 3-yard line. The question was, are they just going to run it 3 times? And instead, they spread things out. They try to throw it doesn't connect. And then I think, I guess they just don't trust Hampton. I guess they just throw until they score or they don't. I don't like that against the Broncos. You really need a run game at this point. You know, when you have this little room to work with, a good secondary is going to be really tough to go against. And then they immediately give it to Hampton, and he scores practically untouched. So clearly they do trust Hampton in these moments. And there could not have been a better time for Hampton to have a really good game. The fact of the matter is, Najee Harris is out. It looks like an Achilles injury. I'm going to listen to all the post-game pressers and everything and see if we can figure out exactly what it is, but I don't think we can count on Harris being back at all, which is unfortunate. This was a player who never was out. It was Hampton time. It was just, can Amarian Hampton step up when we need him to? And he could. He could. He did it, man. I know a lot of people probably went into this game like, oh, J.K. Dobbins is going to prove why we should have signed him, shouldn't have let him go. And he had a good game. I mean, I'm looking at it. It's 83 yards, 7.5 average yards per carry. That's really good. He got a touchdown. He's a really good player. I would have been happy if they re-signed him. I would have been perfectly happy with that. But Amarian Hampton, I believe, is on track to be better. We will see. Time will tell. Dobbins is more proven than Hampton. Hampton did get 70 yards rushing. I know that the yards per carry doesn't look very good, but I'm looking at how this offensive line run blocks without Mekhi Becton, and I just don't have a lot of faith in it. I don't know. He was consistently facing contact at the line of scrimmage or even before the line of scrimmage and trying to turn it into something. So, I don't know. He still managed to get 70 yards, and importantly, he also got 59 yards receiving. And that's huge because these weren't just like, well, the play fell apart. Who can we hand the ball to? Who can we just toss it? It's not really that Austin Eckler role that we're used to seeing. It was more designed plays where the receivers, I mean, you had the guys wide blocking for him from the get-go. These were design touches for Hampton. And it's nice to see him being trusted in that way. Not just by Herbert, but by Greg Roman. It's nice to see him trusted by the scheme because whether they like it or not, he is going to be a big part of their offense moving forward without Najee Harris. So it's nice to see that they're ready for that in scheme and just in who he is. We are ready to see what happens, and I'm very curious what they're going to do with the secondary running back position. You know, use multiple guys rotating into that role if someone's going to solidify themselves as the next running back. There's been a good argument for Haskins having that, like, being out there as a blocker role. That remains to be seen. We again have another game without much from Trey Harris and without anything from Keandre Lambert-Smith. It's a bit disappointing, but again, they're rookies. They have time to come online. One must imagine that Keenan Allen will be back next year, and therefore we're in good position to not have to spend any more draft capital on wide receivers. I know that they're good picks. I don't like watching those picks. And the main takeaway from the offense is, of course, that Justin Herbert is insane, and we are lucky to have him. And before we conclude, I want to say special teams does concern me. We will probably talk about that later in the week. I don't love that it felt like the Broncos were consistently starting their drives around the 40-yard line, and the Chargers were consistently starting their drives between like the 10 and the 25. That's a huge disadvantage for the Chargers defense and a huge advantage for the Broncos offense. Darius Davis didn't have a great day. They didn't do a great job stopping Mims on the return. Obviously, he's a really good returner, but that is a battle they need to win. I think in a Harbaugh offense, it's really important that you win the field position game so that you can afford to run the ball, run the clock. They still ended up having a time of possession advantage of about 12 minutes, I think. That's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, Cameron Dicker was good as always, so the most important aspect of the special teams unit was there. Just something to keep an eye on. All right, but the main takeaway from this game, we are 3-0. We're going to enjoy this. We're not going to do what these fans of great teams often do, which is every time they win, they go, yeah, but this went wrong and that went wrong, and man, we're not good enough. We're not good enough. All you can reasonably ask of a team is make it so that any given Sunday, it is a perfectly reasonable expectation that we are likely to win. And the Chargers are doing that. Let's be happy about this. They just won 3 division games, 3-0. This is incredible. What a strange and incredible start to a season that starts out with 3 division games. What a difficult way to start the season. And the Chargers succeeded 3 times. We got to be happy with that. Their success came in the fourth quarter when it was needed most. I am happy with that. I believe in Herbert. I believe in Harbaugh. And the vibes are good. The vibes are really good, man. I think what matters most in the end is, did you win or not? And the Chargers came through. They did it. So that'll do it for me. Later in the week, planning to check in on these injuries, check in on some of the details of how these players were used, and trying to figure out what's the running back room going to look like? What is the offensive line room going to look like? But for now, let's just be happy. We got the dub. That's all we can ask for. 3-0. 3-0. Are you kidding me? 3-0. Let's go, dude. Hey, do you guys believe in QJ yet? You should.
Get those Broncos. Yeah.